Although connected with the temples, Devdasis were a complete caste unto themselves, which means they were not Brahmins, but daughters of Devdasis followed their mother's profession, and sons became Natuvanars, or musicians, dance teachers, and composers. Many Natuvanars took the surname Pillai and were respectable and known for their worth in art. These musicians and dance teachers have jealously guarded or preserved the art, as we call gharana or traditional art, and throughout the centuries they maintained these traditions and guarded these art within their own families. Many of them were illiterate and so had no access to formal education or literature connected with the arts. Illiteracy did not mean formal degree or institutionalized learning, but it meant natural learning from within the families. Some families tenaciously held on to the theoretical background, which means the theory part of it was kept as almost a secret within certain families, and both the practice and its manifestation in music and dance followed. In traditional Bharatanatyam families, that is the Devdasis, training began from birth. A girl child was inducted into basic music and dancing from the time she could start, say 5 to 7 years of age. In fact, by the time these girls were in their teens, some like Bhanumati and her cousin Varalakshmi both became full-fledged dancers of repute. Down the ages, the Devdasis traditionally took to dancing Sadir or Bharatanatyam, whatever one may call it, with the transmission occurring from mother to daughter. They performed in temples and outside. The chain of preservation was maintained by them alone until others entered the arena. Unlike most married women who did not have economic control or even their own children, Devdasis were economically independent. They managed their own finances. The head of a Devdasi family was the oldest female member, known as the Takrivavi, Thurston said in 1909. The Taikirivai also exerted her control over the artistic training of members of the family. Sons of Devdasis, being independent on their mothers rather than their fathers, were generally regarded as inferior to daughters. Women made all major decisions regarding the household, including controlling the finances, notes Amrit Srinivasan, 1984. In a joint family, the earnings of all its members were shared. Because family wealth lay in artistic knowledge as well as the beauty and attractiveness of the women, men were often required to give artistic support to the female members of the family. This usually meant being part of a musical accompaniment for their dance. The sons of Devdasis became dance teachers or musicians. Many of the men in the Devdasi community could not marry, either because of shortage within the community, because well over half became dedicated Devdasis, or because they lacked the financial security. A significant number had to postpone their marriage till they were established as dance teachers or musicians. Some of them became independent enough to move out of female-dominated joint family and establish a separate residence. It was rare to find a Devdasi family with a married son still living with them. This was in contrast to the male-dominated households of the Natunar families, where sons often brought their wives to live in their ancestral home. These women were then obliged to help with the housework and contribute to the common good of the family with homemaking skills rather than artistic ones. Here too, financially secure males preferred to move out of the joint family and establish separate households. One important aspect of the historic role of the traditional community that deserves special attention is the methodology of teaching. The approach was complete and holistic, and the aim was to prepare the dancer as a complete artist. Virtually, each member of the family of the traditional parampara could fulfill one role or more than one sometimes. A singer could be a natunar could be a mridangist could also be a teacher, a dancer could sing for another dancer, and so on. The word multitasking was invented long ago, if you see this tradition. The members of the family were so trained that interchangeability of roles was easily possible. The system was codified through generations of family staying together and passing it from one to another. This also meant they lived together in one cluster, one village, or one area. This meant the male members took to conducting the teaching of dance, while female members took to music and household duties. This led to clear division of labor and work. The system of such teaching and performing meant being bound to one person or place. This is how then later the banis or each school or tradition or gharana in Bharatanatyam came up, called banis. Much later, these families broke up and went their own ways. It meant natunars came to cities and became gurus, and students became teachers. It also in the long run meant separating music from dance. Why has the individuality of the past given way to the sameness of today? Perhaps the answer lies in the hereditary teaching methodology developed over centuries by certain families in Tamil Nadu. Sadir, the precursors of today's Bharatanatyam, was practiced by members of a particular community, the Isai Vellar. Its female members eschewed performance to sharpen their skills in Natuvangam, a composite term for teaching the classical dance genre and conducting its performance. They were the Natunars who trained the women, Devdasis, to dance at temples as part of the daily festive rites. In the royal courts, the ritual became art. Sadir was indispensable at the family functions of well-to-do officials and landowners. Social status was determined by the number and quality of the performers on such occasions. The community of dancers and dance gurus was nurtured by multi-level patronage. They were entitled to payments of cash and kind from temples they served. We hear of the appointment of the Vallur Natunars 1,000 years ago to teach the Chola princes Kuntavai. There were impulsive gifts at courts. A monarch pleased with a bravura performance would shower the dancer with costly gems and land grants. The Natunars too came in for praise and gifts. The scales were balanced. One group could not survive without the other. What is the difference between a Natunar and a dance teacher? Ask the dancers themselves, and they will say that it starts with the Natunars being treasure troves of knowledge, not book learned or theoretical, but with the heritage of a practical methodology and wisdom. Their cultural matrix and racial memory made them intuitive in teaching. They taught their students as much by what they said as by what they did not say. As the repositories of centuries of accumulated knowledge and experience, the Natunars were greatly sought after during the Renaissance phase of Bharatanatyam in this century. They became indispensable guides to the women of the so-called good families who took up this art for the first time without any background or exposure to it. There was no other access to the art except from this singular stronghold of an oral tradition which could be imparted only in practice. During the British rule, Sadir has been looked down upon as immoral and bawdy. Social reforms banned Nautch from the temples. The Devdasis suddenly lost their livelihood. The Natunars too fell on evil days. But when nationalism fired in Indian culture, women like Rukmini Devi were inspired to take up Sadir in its avatar as Bharatanatyam and stage it in a different context and milieu. The Devdasis dwindled in number, gave up the struggle, and lapsed into anonymity. There was one Bala Saraswati to win worldwide acclaim and one Gauri Ammal to teach the techniques of Abhinaya, and add Swarna Saraswati. The system had its advantages and disadvantages like any other. It meant while roles were clearly defined, they could also be rigid. Though the Natvanars found they were in great demand, the social stigma did not vanish at once. The fear of losing their self-respect made the Natvanars clannish and touchy. The least misunderstanding would become a major issue. They would pack up their symbols and desert a growing institutions like Kalakshetra. Chokkalingam Pillai was ready to face the struggle of starting his own classes rather than accept what he deemed loss of face. Students who strayed or took help from other teachers for reasons however valid were dropped forthwith. No amount of pleading could make the Natvanar relent and take the errant back to the fold. Before 1940, it was uncommon for a woman to perform Natuvangam. In 1943, traditional Natvanar Chokkalingam Pillai withdrew his services for important Bharatanatyam recitals, the Arangetram of Chinna Sarada and Rukmini Devi's performance at Music Academy, and left Madras. So Rukmini Devi, Radha Barnier, both dancers, and S. Sarada, musician and Sanskrit scholar, took the plunge into this hitherto male domain. Necessity became the mother of invention and forced the women to break with tradition and study and perform Natuvangam. Bhairavan Pillai, who used to play the Mirdangam at Rukmini's dance recitals, came to the rescue and taught Sarda and Radha to do Natuvangam with cymbals. Rukmini Devi soon mastered the art. Necessity became mother of invention. She said, one great new thing that has come as a result of these difficulties is the complete separation of our work from the dance teachers. It is well known that they are a small clan of people who have neither believed it possible for anybody to conduct a dance performance. I have always had a determination that this should not be so. They used to think that except for the usual class of people, no one else would be able to dance. Now there are so many girls from good families who are excellent dancers. Other dancers, including Isai Velar women, soon followed their example. Today, women from a wide variety of backgrounds perform Natuvangam, and there is an increase in the number of actively performing dancers who now run schools and conduct recitals. The trauma of being beholden to the whims of the male Natvanars from the Isai Velar community, together with the newly attained confidence that they too could perform this function, meant that from 1943 onwards, Kalakshetra, one of the major dance institutions where Bharatanatyam is taught, never again employed a Natvanar from the Isai Velar community. Between 1943 and 1980, only one Isai Velar student, T.R. Devanathan, was trained to become a Natvanar at Kalakshetra. The 1943 incident and subsequent decisions, whether conscious or unconscious, were regarded by many as the first major step in loosening the hold that hereditary male Natvanars exercised over female dancers. No longer would non-hereditary dancers be dependent on a professional community of Natvanars. Within the traditional community, however, little changed. Hereditary dancers who continue to perform after the revival continue to depend on Natvanars from their community. The system also led to creation of what we call in Bharatanatyam Banis. It means special characteristics and features based on the provenance. Provenance means a place, a geographical area. Either it can be a district, it can be a village, it can be a regional interpretation of that cultural importance. The three main schools of Natuvangam or Banis to have come down this century were involved principally in the villages of Pandanallur, Vallur and Tanjore town itself. The first and the last share many stylistic features that are common. Both claim descent from the Tanjore Quartet or Tanjore Quartet as we call it, and disciples of Muthuswami Dikshitar, the brothers of Ponaiya, Chinnaiya, Sivanandan, Vadavelu, who won fame for their prowess in music and ability to compose. Today, their compositions are rarely sung on stage, but still form the backbone of the rich repertoire of their Natunar descendants. Later, when gurus travelled, the Banis went with them wherever they went, and for no longer remained limited or insular to a place specific. Many exponents of the Pandanur style are not from Pandanallur, but Madras or Mysore or Baroda. Scholar Tenada suggests that in order to account for the present, justify it, understand it and criticize it, the past is selectively appropriated, remembered, forgotten or investigated. It is possible that this is what happened to Bharatanatyam. The traditional past was selectively appropriated by post-colonial nationalists by reinventing the history of the Devdasis in order to justify a revival of the dance form. While a part of the revival meant the invention of a tradition, the simultaneous adherence to tradition in terms of learning from the traditional masters, keeping the traditional repertoire while simultaneously reinterpreting it, and making monumental modernist changes is consistent with the concept of traditionalism and therefore with modernity. In addition to the removal of traditional Natunars and the focal shift from Krishna's sensuality to Nataraja's purity, other major changes include the spatial shift from temple to proscenium stage and a change in pedagogy. Indeed, dance underwent a profound metamorphosis from Sadir to Bharatanatyam, from untouchable to national art form and finishing school for young women of marriageable age. The revival of South Indian dance involved a revivification or bringing back to life. It was equally a repopulation, a reconstruction, a renaming, a resituation, a restoration, says Matthew Harp Allen. Finally, the presentation of Bharatanatyam was also modernized. The costumes were changed and the musicians were placed on the side of the stage rather than behind the dancers as was traditionally done. Most of the outstanding names in the field of Bharatanatyam are the students of different traditional Natunars, like Rukmini Devi from non-traditional family and Bala Saraswati from a traditional family. The Kalakshetra Bani, some like historian Kokar, ever Kalakshetra is not a Bani in the strict sense but mix of many teachers who taught there. Source Shanmukha 2011 is an example of a school that was founded on the training of Devdasi and Isai Vellar teachers but was liberated from the control of the traditional masters when the school began to train its own dance teachers and Natunars. The artistic vision of the founder Rukmini Devi has been the paramount influence. Rukmini Devi took several Bharatanatyam Banis which she studied from several hereditary practitioners and evolved her own interpretation based on those elements which she felt were most aesthetically pleasing. Essentially, she selected dances and themes from the traditional repertoires but made adjustments according to the perceptions of how the dance should be taught and performed. These reflected her own aesthetic criteria. The standardized repertoire of Kalakshetra has been taught and disseminated all over India by teachers and Natuvanars. This is an advantage for dancers who travel from Madras because it was relatively easy to assemble an orchestra that is familiar with the Kalakshetra repertoire. I am sure Rukmini Devi had a lot of admiration for someone like Bala Saraswati, but publicly people drew lines between them saying that one stands for Sringaram and the other for Bhakti, and the two didn't meet. Did they think that Balaswati had no bhakti, or that Rukmini Devi, with all the work she did in her dance dramas, had no Shringaram? It depends on what your idea of Shringaram is, says her student Leela Sampson. Bala Saraswati was a ninth generation descendant born into a Devdasi family whose traditions of music and dance were the focus of life for generations. Her grandmother's grandmother, Kamakshi Ammal, danced and sang in the court of Tanjore. Her great-grandmother Sundara Ammal was a musician. So too her grandmother Veena Dhanammal and her mother Jayamal. Most of the artists in Bala's family in recent generations have been musicians rather than dancers. Veena Dhanammal was trained in the musical styles of Muthuswami Dikshitar and Shyama Sastri. It is her interpretation of the music which has been perpetuated through Bala's family, and her training which has influenced her interpretation of her Padam repertoire. Bala Saraswati herself began her life in a world of music and made her public debut at 7. Her relatives were almost all musicians. Therefore, the child who became the world's most revered dancer of Bharatanatyam was immersed in the finest musical atmosphere from the beginning. In her later years, Bala devoted her time and pleasures to singing. Bala sang, accompanied and taught her daughter Lakshmi her own immense repertoire, spent her time exploring, researching, learning new items, and generally surrounding herself with her music. She received honors as a musician from the established society in India. If the world knew her as a dancer, she was, first and last, a musician as well. Her grandson Anirudh Knight continues the Bala Saraswati Bani. The revival of Bharatanatyam marked a watershed in the presentation of classical dance in South India. Popular conception today is that this defunct art was taken away from the brink of extinction by a group called revivalists. The position of Bharatanatyam as a national treasure has led to intense pressure to conserve the dance in what is perceived to be its traditional form. The opposing desires of Bharatanatyam dancers to preserve and innovate have led both sides to seek historical justification for their positions. The two extremes, innovators who equate art with creativity, and the traditionalists who wish to preserve it completely unchanged, are in the minority. The majority has taken the middle road and combined traditional repertoire with new compositions in their programs. The gradual divorce of dance training from training in musical accompaniment has also created a tendency towards greater emphasis on movement and less reliance on musicality. The increased concentration on movement and rhythmic complexities has resulted in speed delivery and diminishing emphasis on, say, the expressional aspect or abhinaya. Because Bharatanatyam has moved a long way from its origins, geographically, socially, artistically, there has been some recreation involved in the establishment of the dance that we now see today. Bharatanatyam today has assumed many of the characteristics of a new or invented or revived tradition.